And for young people, I have to say to you, the price you have to pay is boredom.
Be bored, people.
Be bored. Be way more bored.
You can be walking down the street, and for no apparent reason, all of a sudden you feel such a happiness. You look around you, and all of a sudden you see the beauty of the world around you. It's this moment where you feel lifted up. And we all have these glimpses, these moments where we feel at peace and inner contentment or inner happiness. And that, I think, is the real state of our true self.
In your day-to-day life, you don't walk down the street and see some 14-year-old kid playing, this amazing guitar. And then the next house along, you see some kid in the front yard who's juggling 15 balls. In the next house, you've got a kid on a unicycle. It's like, this is not the real world. Like when you're online, all of these things exist side by side.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to...
So we define the problem here. It's information overload, and we need to have information hygiene.
Yeah.
We need to discern.
Yes.
How does the spiritual life help us?
So one of the great skills we learn through spiritual practice is...
I think that is God.
Yeah.
I think,
I said, I discovered God.
That is God. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. This episode, we're going to talk about how to live a truly spiritual life in the 21st century. And so this episode is for anyone who is struggling to find meaning and purpose in today's fast-paced, competitive world that is constantly bombarding us with stimuli. So we're going to talk about questions like, how do we find peace and happiness in today's world? And how do we deal with modern problems like information overload and choice paralysis? And, how do we find true purpose in life? How do we get a sense of direction? How do we learn to listen to the voice of our soul? So if you grew up in the age of digital technology and you are struggling to find meaning, purpose, and direction, then this episode is really for you. Vajan and I recorded this episode during our meditation retreat with our spiritual community in New York. And so I hope you enjoy.
The spirituality is something that's always been very difficult for people to put a really clearly concise label or description on, because it's actually a very ethereal subject, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about what the spiritual life means to me, I think in many different terms, but one of the key things is it's a recognition of the world in all of its complexity. So when I try and experience life and look at my own life and try and understand what the world is, I don't limit myself just to a purely mechanical or material reductionist picture of the world. I don't think that all there is that exists is matter. So I think there's another element to reality. And I think that other element to reality is the most important thing. It really is fundamental. So previously we've talked about consciousness being fundamental, but it seems that there is this spirit to existence.
Yes, and if I might rephrase it, it's like all of us kind of feel there is more out there.
Yeah.
So the famous Shakespeare quote, there's more between heaven and earth than is dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. This was the literal quote from Hamlet, as I remember it. But this is often used to phrase this idea that we all have, that, we're living our life and we're going about our day to day, but there is definitely something bigger going on. There's a mystery to life that we feel. Sometimes we get glimpses of it. Sometimes we feel something very deeply, but there is a spiritual element. It's unknown. It's the unknown, but I think through spiritual life, it can become known.
Yes.
We can familiarize ourselves with it.
Yeah. And I think the word itself, so spiritual, it's got a connection with obviously the word spirit. But I think even the word inspire and breathing,
comes from the Latin words to breathe.
Yeah, exactly. So it's something that's so fundamental to our experience of life. Is that it's like a fish in water. You ask him, how's the water today?
Yes.
He says, what water?
Exactly.
And so I think that is really the fundamental idea for me is with spirituality. It is the fundamental basis of reality, and matter and all of the experiences we have comes from that foundation of the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you even if you don't truly believe that, if you leave space in your picture of the world, if you leave space in your understanding of the world for that to be a possibility, then it starts to allow you to think about the world in different ways and start to think about the problems of your life and where you'll find the possible solutions. And so spirituality seems to have arisen at the very beginning of self-aware consciousness. Once we started to be aware in the way we are, it seems that that mirrored the beginning of this understanding, or this idea that there is a spiritual aspect to life as well as the material.
And that brings us also back to the question, who am I? Right? Because it's closely connected to who we are.
Yeah.
And we are also the only species or creature that will ask itself that question.
Yes.
So I have never heard, well, maybe I don't speak the language, but I've never heard a lion ask itself who they are.
Yeah.
Or a dog.
So I think the spiritual tradition is attempting to answer some of the deeper, more fundamental questions in life, like who am I, why am I here, what is the meaning of reality, and also it's a way to solve some of the inherent problems with being alive. So one of the most fundamental and inherent problems is the fact that we will all age, we will all become sick, we will all die. And so as a self-aware being that can look into the future and can be aware of our own mortality and be aware that this is a finite experience we're having, and before we know it, it will come to an end. That is the type of problem that can paralyze you. It can become an existential crisis in your life. And so how a lot of people try and protect themselves from that reality is try and protect themselves by using the resources in the material world. They try and amass as much wealth or power or name or fame or whatever it is that they believe will somehow insulate them from that reality. But no one can hide from that reality.
Yeah.
You can distract yourself for a period of time. You can try and ignore these things, but there always comes a time where they will creep back in.
Yeah, and I wouldn't let that happen like the last years before,
No.
you leave this body.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit earlier.
Exactly. And that's an idea that it's better to have many small deaths during your life than one catastrophic
What do you
one.
mean with a small death?
So small death is the small letting goes of your attachments. So letting go of your attachment to this aspect or that aspect of reality or of your life. And accepting the nature of the experience.
So can we talk about some of these attachments? What are things that people are attached to that they could let go?
So there's an infinite number of those, and everyone has
a few universal ones too.
Yeah, and I think there's one thing I really wanted to touch upon was this idea of the character, and like we've used the word an avatar before, but we've used it not in the word of a spiritual teacher or a spiritual master, but in the way it's used, say, in the online world, that you have a character in a form, and you have particular traits and attributes. And so that's one thing that people have a tremendous attachment to them, is the sense of self.
Yeah.
And
the ego, could we call it the ego?
Yeah, exactly. And so the ego really encapsulates all of those preferences, our likes, our dislikes, our experiences, our memories, all of those things all come together to create this particular character that we call the self. And we identify ourselves so much with that the fear of letting go of that becomes one of the great fears.
But also, I think the problem is that we are not really that character. So if we go back to the question, who am I? It's not that character.
Yeah.
And interestingly, our teacher, Sri Chinmoy, he often spoke about the ego as the spiritual thief. He called it a thief. So it's like the ego comes in and steals that true reality, the true self, and kind of replaces it with this kind of, persona, character that we've created that has all these likes and dislikes, attachments to life and values and, problems.
Yeah.
Problems, lots of problems. And yeah, definitely in the spiritual life, one of the things, of course, we want to transform the ego. I mean, get rid of the ego. I don't think you can get rid of, for me, ego is also the sense of self, like a sense of there is an I here. Yeah. There's a self that experiences things. That you could call that the general ego. But then we talk about the small human ego that is like what we talked about, has all these fears and attachments and kind of suffers from them. Because that's the idea of suffering comes from clinging that we talked about earlier, from your clinging, and what was the other one? Grasping, grasping desires, grasping after things instead of just letting go and being. And then we can kind of go from the small ego to the large ego, a larger self, our higher self. And that's you could call it the divine self, the divine ego.
Yeah, it's like the small I and the capital I.
Yeah.
And most people believe that they are the small I.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's something
There's a capital I, we are all one in the capital I. It's
Yeah.
like all connected.
There's a really great idea I've heard discussed by some spiritual figures, and it's the sense of self is actually what most people identify as their sense of self is some sort of physical tension that they're carrying around somewhere in their body.
Yeah.
Because there's the idea that when you're talking to someone, especially in the English language, when you're talking to a group of children or you're talking to a group of people, and they are their concentration is all over the show. And you say, come on, pull yourself together.
Oh, yeah.
And so this idea of, oh my God, okay, I need to pull myself together somehow. And so it's kind of like this physical, like tensing up of the body.
Yeah.
And I've heard that discussed is for a lot of people, if you ask them what their sense of self is, it's some sort of tension that they're trying to pull themselves together. They're trying to stop themselves drifting apart in the cosmos or like falling through the floor or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's mostly the mind with its thoughts that scatters. Like that's not where we want to search for the real higher self.
Yeah.
I think we want to search for it in the heart. That's the easiest way to connect with it. That's been my experience over the years. Like the meditation on the heart center and the spiritual heart. And there the sense of this higher divine self comes to the fore. And it's an amazing experience because you don't feel that attachment anymore to, your own small daily affairs and problems and your own. It's like this really sense of expansion and being one with entire world and humanity, the universe. So it's definitely that is one of the advantages of pursuing a spiritual life, is that you grow more into this expanded version of yourself, all embracing. And I guess that's also where love comes from. Love is the all embracing quality that you feel that you and I are actually not separate in our truest essence. We are one.
Yeah.
And the sense of division and separation, that is what the small ego is really good at. It's like, this is just my little island of self, and everything outside it is strange.
And there's a sense of protection, like trying to protect yourself from the reality that you are actually part of.
Yeah, maybe all these striving for wealth, name it fame, kind of barriers to protect that little ego from being safe and inoculated. As we say, it's illusory. You cannot protect yourself from those things forever. But
So I think that captures really well some of the fundamental problems that spirituality in the long term has been trying to solve. That sense of the wrong attachment to being, like identifying with the wrong sense of self, which limits us, which separates us from reality, which keeps us disconnected and causes us endless suffering.
Because it also really influences how we think of the world, or how we view the world, right? How we see ourselves. And I think you wanted to talk about that as well.
Yeah. So I thought what would be interesting talking about spirituality in this day and age, because a lot of people would say, well, do we really still need spirituality? I mean, if we look around and we look at our material prosperity and we look at the advances we've made in science and medicine and the understanding of the world, is that not something that we could leave behind and we could just embrace these new realities and these new technologies? And I think there's a real danger in that, though, because like, for example, at the moment with the rise of AI, it's like, wow, this is the greatest technology ever. We can leave behind all of the problems of the past, and we'll get this new technology.
Yeah, it's going to solve all our problems.
Solve all of our problems. The fundamental problem still remains of being a conscious, finite being. And how do we transcend that sense of limitation? And how do we connect with something that will transcend death and mortality?
And I think sometimes the problem is why people hesitate to accept a spiritual life. When you talk about it, it seems something kind of dry, kind of like, oh yeah, you have to give up all your attachments and desires, and you become this kind of sterile stone Buddha.
Yeah.
And whereas, it's been my experience that it's an unbelievably amazing adventure. It's an adventure of consciousness, but it's like so many new things you're exploring and learning, both inwardly and outwardly. It completely changes your outlook on the world. It brings to the fore qualities you never knew you had, talents that you never knew you had. So it's just one big positive, but that only comes to the fore when you really start living it. So when you just talk about it to people, these are really hard things to bring about. And I remember when I just started my spiritual life, I got so enthusiastic about it. I wanted everybody to know, yeah, this is the way you should live your life.
Wake up, people.
Wake up. There's more to it. And it's all good. But that doesn't work.
No.
as I discovered pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You cannot force people to wake up. It's an inner movement that has to happen in the individual at God's choice hour, as our
Yeah,
teacher used to say.
and the spiritual teachers all say that as well, that it's not our job to wake up other people. It's when they're ready and when they um when the God's hour strikes for each of us. And so if you've become interested in these questions and you're starting to think about them and you're starting to try and understand your place in the universe and what it all means and how you could find a deeper sense of meaning and purpose, that really means on some level that your hour has struck.
Yeah, because I think if you still feel somewhere that wealth, name, and fame and acquiring these things is going to make you happy, you have to live through that and really realize, no, that's not the answer. Because if you still have that clinging in your mind and you start a spiritual life and you're not really ready for it, it will always kind of distract you, I think. You'll always think, oh, but if I just made some more money, if I just made some financial security, or I would, make this great career move, then I'll be ready for it.
Yeah, always remain is the most powerful temptation.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't mean you need to be fully ready to renounce everything, but there needs to be an understanding that the experiences you're really looking for at the deepest level and not to be found in the purely material world.
Yes. And the good news is that if you do find your true self, you can still have all your material possessions, but you'll not be possessed by them.
Yes.
So that's very often the trap, that if you have material possessions, they start possessing you.
Yeah.
Right? You start worrying about them. If you have a beautiful car, you're afraid that it's going to be scratched. You want to take care of it. And if you have all these possessions you constantly have to take care of, it's actually they start possessing you. But if you are truly detached, you can have all these possessions, but not be possessed by them. And
Exactly.
so it's not like, you have to give up everything. And our teacher also said, Sri Chinmoy also often stipulated that it's not about giving up your attachment, giving up the things that you own, or renouncing the world. It's renouncing the things that block you from discovering your true self. So it's actually renouncing the qualities of fear, doubt, jealousy, bondage, insecurity, all these things that are inner qualities, negative qualities that keep us tied to this limited self that we have. So it's renouncing those things, renouncing the ignorance inside us, rather than just, the material things.
Yeah. And you're talking about the material things, I was watching over the weekend, a gentleman that I know has got a very expensive and fancy sports car here, and he took it out for a drive. And immediately, as soon as he came home, he had to spend hours and hours cleaning it because it got some bug marks.
Oh yeah.
And you see how you think this thing is going to give you these wonderful experiences, but it's you think you're going to possess it, but you really see the power of the material world to possess you.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my friend as well, and he's a very keen surfer. And he was saying how it's the same thing when he gets a new surfboard. He's so protective of it until it gets its first scratch or dent. And then after that, you can really relax, because the first while when you have a new material possession, you're so attached and it possesses you so strongly that you really want to, oh no, I don't want to get a scratch on it. I don't want to get anything wrong with it.
And I don't realize that it's actually possessing you at that point.
Yeah, you kind of feel it. I remember when I got a new bike, and I was so, you're so protective of it.
So shiny and new.
Exactly. And so I was saying, what the guy at the shop should do is he should offer a service, is when you get your new surfboard or you get your new bike, as you walk out, he hits it with a steel bar or something and puts a nice dent in it or a scratch.
He demolishes your attachment.
And then he says, there you go. It'll be $5. It's a service that they can provide.
Yeah, we will happily provide those.
We'll break
to the spiritual people who don't want to be attached to their new possessions. We'll rack it a little bit.
Yeah, we'll give them something just to allow them to relax a little bit. So I thought that was it's a beautiful example of how just in the day-to-day life we can be possessed by the things around us and our attachments to them. So we're talking about spirituality being something that's very fundamental to human experience of the world. So right since we became aware and conscious, we started to feel and try and interact with this unseen world. And so there's been a huge and wondrously deep story of different teachers coming at different times with sharing different parts of the puzzle of life and sharing their teachings. And each teacher comes at a different time with a different teaching for that particular era or epoch that they're living in. But I think you can see in the past, and we've talked about this before, but spirituality was not all, let's say, but many spiritual traditions had a real focus and emphasis on renouncing the world and leaving society and practicing spirituality outside of society.
Yeah, if you, for instance, look at Buddhism, that was the whole story of how Buddha became he was a rich prince.
Yeah.
He decided to renounce all that. So he totally left behind not only his kingdom and palace, but his wife and child.
Yeah.
Went to the forest and started meditating there. I mean, that's the classical picture of renouncing the world.
Yeah, and when we've talked about the desert fathers in Egypt, the early Christian mystics, and you see that in many Christian traditions throughout the centuries. And you see it in many religious traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism as well, where there was a very strong emphasis that if you wanted to practice spirituality seriously, this society that we lived in at that particular point was not the right environment. And I think there's a few reasons for that. And especially in the past, the way society was structured is that you had very few rights.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were living in Europe in the Middle Ages, or you're living in Asia in, the 5th century or the 10th century, your personal rights, your property rights, your rights of freedom were actually very, very low and were basically unconstrained were very tightly constrained by the power of the kings and the monarchs and the ruling forces. So if they decided they wanted to call you up and send you off to war, or if they decided they wanted to come and take your property, you had no recourse. Yeah. And so society in many ways was not set up in a way that you actually had much autonomy or freedom. Like you maybe had a small limited amount, but you were very much beholden to many other forces.
Yeah, unless you joined the church or like a religious organization, you were kind of shielded from that.
Exactly. And so I think there's I was in Ireland just recently, and I was thinking about the Irish monks, and often they move to these very small islands like the Skelligs and different islands off the coast of
which
Ireland.
Is where the Star Wars movie was filmed.
Just
for the popular culture.
Yeah, that was a little Easter egg there. Yeah. But they had an 11th century prayer, and they were praying to God to bless them with certain things, but they were also praying for the church leaders to have the wisdom to make good choices so that they could practice their spirituality in peace. And they also were praying for the leaders of the day, so whoever they were at that particular time, to have the wisdom and the depth to make good decisions for the country so they wouldn't be affected as well. And I think for people in the past, that was a real very visceral experience that your country would go to war, or the neighboring country would march through. And so, destroying things and causing havoc. And so if you really wanted to have the time and space to practice deep spirituality, it was very difficult to do it while living in the world. And then there was also crime, murder, robberies, all of these things.
Brigands
were much more prevalent. So you could see that at that time, until relatively recently, I think, that somehow trying to leave society was a wise decision. If you'd really felt that the spiritual aspect of life was fundamental, and that was the thing you wanted to spend your time diving into, it made total sense to try and walk away from the society you were part of and try and find some small cloistered community where you could really focus without all the problems and the distractions of your culture.
Yeah.
And I actually have a nice aphorism here that I just want to share. This is from Sri Chinmoy. And he wrote, "I loved my soul's ancient illumination journey. I love my life's modern perfection goal." So I loved my soul's ancient illumination journey. I love my life's modern perfection goal.
So the soul's ancient illumination journey is, how do you see that?
So I see that this was the game that was being played for a very long time here with people practicing spirituality. They were having to renounce or cloister themselves from the problems of the world. And then they were desperately seeking illumination. They were seeking a way out of the turmoil and the problems of life. But I think we've entered a new age of spirituality. And so that's why today I wanted to really focus in on how spirituality looks and manifests now compared to how it looked.
Yeah, we are in a
in the past.
completely different era. I mean, you can see,
Yeah.
100 years ago, the world was so different.
Yeah.
The material world was different. And I think related to that, the spiritual world had different goals and values.
Yeah.
And I guess that ties into the last part of that.
Yeah. So I love my life's modern perfection goal. And so it seems as though in the last 100 years, or since say the late 1800s, that suddenly human prosperity has completely exploded and started to blossom and bloom. And so suddenly the standard of living has gone up like anything, and we've had many conflicts and problems. But we are living in a day and age now where you actually can live inside society. And as we've talked before about are we living in the best times ever? The chance of you being called off to war, or caught up in conflict, or any of these problems like famines and all of these types of things that people would suffer from, we in many ways we're protected and insulated.
They're on an all-time low, those chances.
Yes. So I think now this is a time where you actually can live in the world and really practice deep spirituality, and in a way that is very powerful and transformative, and that we're trying to, as the name of our podcast, the acceptance of life for the transformation of life. And so I think this is really one of the first times that this has really been possible, that people can truly embrace both at the same time. You can embrace the deepest depths of spirituality, but still have a functioning life and career and a business, and take part in the activities of the culture fully, because we have this level of safety and protection from the forces of
and that's something really to be grateful for.
It's
a real miracle.
It really is a miracle, because if you look around in other areas of the world, like if you look in the animal kingdom, it's still might is right.
Yeah.
So it's still the most powerful, chimp or baboon. He will basically torment and terrorize the rest of the chimps, because he's the biggest and the strongest, and he has access to all of the resources, and then most of the other ones, completely held down and suppressed. Yeah. And we've created a type of society now which allows us all to have enough freedom and enough autonomy and agency that we can really choose the things that we value, and we can really go after them wholeheartedly without a lot of interference from.
Yeah, and that of course also changes I guess the spiritual life, right? The way society structures now gives the spiritual life a different angle, a different outlook, a different shape and form.
Yeah, it's always the law of unintended consequences. So we make life materially infinitely better. And all of our ancestors would have given anything to live in this time. Yeah. Like for our ancestors from 100, 200 years ago, for them to walk into a modern supermarket and see the array of food that is available all year round.
They think they're going straight to heaven. Probably.
Exactly. And to have warmth and hot water, on tap.
Yeah,
and to be able
tips.
Yeah, all of these things are absolute miracles any other time in world history. But because we've grown up with these things, we don't see the miraculous nature.
Yeah, we take them for granted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But because we have all of these wondrous marvels around us, it creates a series of problems that people are dealing with now, and they're new types of problems. And so I think that's what I want to talk a little bit about, is that for spirituality to really be transcended, for it to be something that is true across all time and all periods, at all moments, it has to be a set of ideas and a way of being that would have worked 10,000 years ago and would have worked 5 days ago, and it has to work again in 500 years from now. And so I think many of the solutions to problems, these new modern problems that people are suffering from, actually can be found inside the spiritual tradition as well, and through the spiritual practice.
So let's talk about those problems. Like, what are the problems that the generation of today in the 21st century is facing?
Yeah.
And how can spirituality be an answer to them?
Yeah. And this is one thing I'd like to say as well about this, is that all people who are part of any spiritual tradition I think we all have a great responsibility, that we've been entrusted with a great treasure. So from our teachers and from the great seekers and the great masters that have come before us, they've left us this great depth of spiritual wisdom. And somewhere inside that spiritual wisdom is solutions to problems that have not yet arisen.
And
And so,
it's said that the spiritual master always comes ahead of its time.
yeah,
Time.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so I think that's an important thing to be aware of, because I was born in 1980, so I grew up through the 80s and 90s.
You poor boy.
These,
You missed the 70s.
I know, it's the one thing I regret, right? Is that I didn't even get to set one foot into the.
Yeah, at least I got 2 years out of the 70s.
But so the problems that we were facing as young people in the 1990s are actually fundamentally different in some ways than problems that people are facing now.
Yeah.
And what you would do if you were a wise person and that you had a spiritual wisdom that was passed, that was entrusted with you by your teacher, you would think, okay, you would look and say, what are the problems that are happening now for young people? Because young people are always on the cutting edge. So they're on the cutting edge of the newest ideas, but they're also on the cutting edge of facing the newest problems that are arising. So problems are arising, and it's always the young people, the teenagers, in particular, that really seem to catch the brunt of those things.
Yes, they're in the forefront. They're like the first in the army. They're like the front of the army.
So exactly, they're putting themselves out there, and so they're suffering from a certain series of problems, which are fundamentally a very different set of problems than I was facing in 1997.
Yeah, right. What do we have to deal with? We had to deal with tech music. What do you call it? House music. That was a real.
Was that a problem, or was that an opportunity?
Oh my God! For me, it was a problem.
So I think until very recently, human experience of going through the teenage years was relatively similar. So obviously, in the 1960s, things started to change fundamentally. There was like a real push into new forms of expression and new forms of music, and so I think the 1960s was a particularly transformative time, and that flowed over into the 1970s. And it was quite interesting because the 1990s is like children of people who were in the 60s.
Yes.
So it's like the generation of the children.
Well, that's how we were raised, really free, right?
Yeah.
That's like our parents were raised in very strict, kind of harsh environments. How we would look to them. Yeah. They had to go to church every Sunday. There were rules, very strict. There was also separation. I mean, in my country, there was the separation between the Protestants. They had all these Protestant sects, and you were not allowed to speak to this sect if you were in this particular. So you had all these kind of, society was very structured, but also very separate in its own, we call them pillars. Yeah. Each had their own pillars. And we were raised in a very free and open, which had its own self problems. Yes. If you have too much freedom and there's no borders, like how do you find your way in the world?
Yeah. And I think from the 1960s onwards, obviously there was a much more availability of drugs and different psychoactive substances. And all of that has just continued to increase exponentially. And so that is a whole series of problems that it creates. But let's focus on. So I want to focus on a couple of unique problems I think that people are suffering with now. And so let's start with the first one we mentioned already, is this idea of an avatar. And so most
persona,
a persona,
not our character.
Yeah, and so we all have our character, our persona that we live out in the world, and so people know us in that particular form. They think, this person's kind, this person's self-giving, this person's slightly cantankerous, this person's sporty, this person is studious, and all of these different things. But the problem for young people are facing with, especially like digital natives, so young people who've grown up from, say, 2000 onwards, they've grown up online. And so they've grown up using social media. So social media, really 2012 is when social media really became, a real thing in our culture. And so if you've grown up from your teenage years using social media, your online persona, this character, or the way you express yourself and the way you're seen online, is another layer of that persona. So for those of us who didn't grow up in that era, we think for young people, oh, why do they care so much? It's not even real. So real. It's just some silly, it's just your Facebook or your Instagram. But for people who've grown up with it as part of their identity, they actually identify with that so strongly that anything that affects and attacks their online persona they feel that just the same way as if you were getting attacked in the real world.
So it's like their ego is tied up into
Exactly. So the ego, they've got the ego that they're experiencing here in the real world, but they've also got a more etheric version, a virtual ego that's existing in the virtual world. And if things happen to them, if you're, you know, shamed or embarrassed, or, you know, some people are attacking you, or, you know, the myriad different things that could happen. If that happens to you online, for young people, that is incredibly catastrophic. You know, and you know, I've heard that with young people being interviewed, and people feel suicidal, and people have taken their own lives because of bullying or because of the shame that they feel about things that have happened online.
Yeah.
And the thing is with the online world is that it's recorded forever.
Right.
And you remember when we were young and we did foolish things, it was never recorded.
No.
So there was always plausible deniability.
Yeah.
And I've heard actually that's the thing, that in the UK, a lot of nightclubs and places where people would go to socialize are closing down. And one of the reasons for that is people feel uncomfortable going out and acting in a wild fashion because they know they could be filmed at any time. And then if they're filmed, it's going to go online and they can never get rid of it.
Yeah, and it can destroy your career options.
Yeah,
for the rest of your life.
It's these types of things that there's this whole fear and worry and concern now based around this persona that we have.
Plus, combined with the urge to kind of shame people publicly online. I mean, people get a lot of malicious pleasure from like canceling people, hate, and shame.
Yeah, because you see that now, like a video will come out of someone, you know, acting badly.
Yeah.
You know, they might have been at a supermarket and someone's filmed them and they've put it up online. And then millions of people from around the world will watch this moment, which is probably a very embarrassing moment for the person concerned.
Which happens millions of times all over the world to many people.
And it would have happened like an infinite number of times in the past, but it was never recorded in the past. So this fear and worry about our reputation in a way that you know is recorded and captured in a way that we have no control of. And that's the thing as well. If you do something really stupid and it goes viral, and it starts, you know, millions of people.
It has a life on its own.
And so there's many people who have been severely damaged from these, you know, these types of experience. And it puts a fear and a worry into people's consciousness, especially people who spend a lot of time online. Oh my God, imagine that.
Yeah.
So there's this whole problem of the wrongful identification of who we truly are. And so we've put all of this. And then the other thing that it does as well is that this version of ourselves that's online is highly curated. It's not a real picture of ourselves.
Oh, so you're not all the time on holidays, like posing
No.
the famous coconut on the Bali beach.
No.
That's not your life.
So this is the thing. And the other thing, the other really painful experience that comes out of this is comparison. And so comparison being the real thief of joy. When you are spending too much time or more time than perhaps you know that you should online, and you're checking out Instagram, you're checking out Facebook, and you're following all these people, and everyone else's life on social media is a selection of all the highlights of their life. Yeah. And so we all unconsciously know that, but when we watch someone else's social media, we immediately compare what they're doing at this high point of their life with what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, we may be sitting on our bed in our pajamas and it's like, you know, we haven't got up on time and we've got all these things that we should be doing. And we're watching someone who's having this real lifetime highlight moment.
Yeah.
And we're comparing that moment that they're having there to this moment we're having now.
Yeah. And it doesn't really come out positively for us.
No. And it's totally the wrong point of reference. Like if you wanted to compare something online, you should compare the very best moments you've had in the last year. You shouldn't compare you sitting, you know, feeling slightly depressed.
Well, maybe you shouldn't compare at all. I mean, that's one of the problems, right? That in the past, like in our day and age, when we compared ourselves with our classmates, with our friends, with a small circle of people that we had around us in our life. Young people nowadays, they have the whole world to compare themselves with.
Yeah.
They follow all these celebrities online and their fantastic curated lives.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can easily get the picture, oh, my life really is dull.
Yeah,
thing,
and whatever you were good at in the past, if you were in a small town and you were a good football player, you were good compared to all of the other football players in your town. You were good compared to the other tennis players or the other runners or the other painters or the other singers or whatever it is. But now you only need to spend 5 minutes on YouTube looking at whatever activity you're interested in. And you'll find an infinite number of people that are infinitely younger than you are and already infinitely better than you will ever be.
So how do we counter this problem? So we've identified.
So this is a problem, and this is a problem that is a really serious problem.
What is the problem? If you just summarize.
So it's an identification with an unreality, with an unreal
virtual persona.
with an unreal version of ourselves, an unreal version of the world.
It's not realistic to begin with.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really exist. It's only in the virtual world.
Yeah. These things only are existing in the virtual world. Like in your day-to-day life, you don't walk down the street and see some 14-year-old kid playing, this amazing guitar. And then the next house along, you see some kid in the front yard who's juggling 15 balls. Yeah. In the next house, you've got a kid on a unicycle. It's like, this is not the real world. Like when you're online, all of these things exist side by side, as though they exist side by side. These are all outliers. These are all real outliers.
Yeah, what do we do about it?
So what we want to do is we want to base our life in something deeply real. And the only way that I've really found to find the real depths of reality is through my spiritual practice. So it's through sitting and meditation that I really feel that all of this imaginary reality starts to slowly fade away. And I find myself like diving down into something that feels infinitely deep and powerful and truly real and meaningful.
I think that is God.
Yeah.
I think,
I discovered God.
That is God. If you have to, put a label on that experience, I would say God or the Supreme.
Yeah.
And the Supreme is real. And it's the only reality because it is everything.
Yeah. So it's fundamental. Everything is blossoming out of that, but everything at some point is a creation of that.
Yeah.
And so if I wanted to really know you, but all I had was your creations, I can get a sense of what you're like perhaps. But to really understand you, I really need to dive into your consciousness. I really need to become one with your consciousness and truly understand you.
So that's
and so that's the thing. We're seeing all of these beautiful flowers and all of these, circuses and trapeze acts and, motorbikes flying through the air and all of these things. But that does not give us the true experience of the divine. It does not give us the true experience of ourself and of reality. And so we need to have the exact opposite of that experience because that experience is so far at one extreme.
Yeah.
It's like the extreme end of manifestation.
Yeah.
It's like all of the most bright and shiny baubles are being thrown up in front of our face. And if we spend time interacting with that, we need to spend an equal amount of time deep within in some deep place of consciousness where we're truly at peace, at rest, and at one with something fundamental.
And it's such a relief too if you have an experience like that. And I think many people we do have experiences like that in our life. Like for instance, you can be walking down the street and for no apparent reason, all of a sudden you feel such a happiness. You look around you and all of a sudden you see the beauty of the world around you. The sunlight, maybe you see the architecture of the place. You maybe see some trees and hear the birds.
You're talking about Amsterdam, aren't you?
I am talking about Amsterdam. It's true. But this is a universal thing. And it's this moment where you feel lifted up. And we all have these glimpses, these moments where we feel at peace and inner contentment or inner happiness. And that I think is the real state of our true self. The only thing is that in our normal day-to-day life, these moments come and go. And they're quite few and far between.
Yeah, far too
few. And so when we experience it, it's like, wow, this feels so amazing. It feels so great to be alive. Everything feels, it's just as it ought to be. Yeah. And you feel part of it. You feel connected. Some people have it when they go to nature. But that is an experience of your true self. That is an experience, I would say, of the heart. When that feeling and there's a feeling of complete relief. You don't feel any tension. There's no more stress. You're not worried about things anymore. You're really in the moment.
And this is really an experience of peace.
Yeah.
And so when people say, oh, I really need some peace because my mind's so busy, I'm so stressed out. But what they're really meaning is they want to be in the moment without needing anything.
Exactly.
For the moment to be exactly perfectly enough as it is without needing anything else.
But I do feel that is an experience of the heart. You cannot will that with your
No.
mind. You cannot say, okay, now I'm going to be really in the moment.
Yeah, and there is a price to pay. And what do you think the price we have to pay is?
I mean, the price to get that thing, I think is spiritual practice and discipline.
Yeah, and for young people, I have to say to you, the price you have to pay is boredom.
Right.
Boredom.
Be bored, people.
Be bored. Be
Young people.
way more bored.
Yeah.
And so this is the thing, because we've found a way to be forever and constantly entertained. Now, for a lot of young people, boredom is their greatest fear. And so I've talked to you about this idea. There's a concept going around now called raw dogging.
Yeah.
And so if you raw dog a flight, is when you go and you get on the flight and you take no entertainment with you. You don't watch any films. You don't bring any headphones.
You just sit in your
You don't listen to anything. You just sit there and just lean into that boredom.
Yeah.
And I think people are starting to realize that this over agitation that we've created inside our own consciousness through constantly needing stimulation, it's feeding that crocodile that's living in your room with you.
Yeah.
And you start feeding it just a couple of YouTube clips and then a few podcasts and, a few more videos and then some music and then a few more videos. And at some point, its appetite becomes so voracious that you cannot stand to be somewhere without doing something, without having something entertaining you. And no human beings have ever lived like that before in history. So they think hunter-gatherers were probably spending about 4 hours a day in activities. So they might have been doing a little bit of hunting. The woman might be doing some gathering in the forest, things. But they were probably able to get enough resources to survive in about 4 hours.
Yeah.
So they had long periods of time.
4-hour workday.
Yeah. So
That's really good.
So the human biology and physiology, I think, is set up for a long periods of not being agitated. And so because we've now filled up all of those moments where you could be slightly bored, and it's like I remember parents from my generation, you'd say, I'm bored. And your parents would say, good, be bored.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay, there's something to be found there. And often in those times of having nothing to do, if you stayed in that space for long enough, and I always like to say in those moments, the way through boredom is going through it. You can't get out of boredom by
I would almost say that meditation is curated boredom. It's like you just sit still. You try to silence your thoughts and just be in the present moment.
Yeah,
it's like the ultimate definition of boredom: being.
And so people, that's the mistake they make. They think that there's nothing inside boredom.
Yeah.
They think boredom is an empty box.
Right.
They look at it and they say there's nothing in there. Look at it; it's totally boring.
Hey, you haven't looked deep enough.
That's the thing. Like if you actually get into that box and you sit in that box for long enough, at some point you go out, you come out the other side of boredom, and it becomes incredibly interesting.
Yes.
Again. So like just all the sensations in being a conscious embodied creature in the universe, suddenly it all starts to tingle and jingle and jangle.
Yes.
It becomes a wildly interesting and exciting.
Yeah, sometimes after a good meditation, when I go outside and see the world, it's like I'm seeing a movie screen. It's so wondrous. There's all these buildings and houses. They're like covered with this magical light, and you feel like, wow, I'm in a movie set right now.
Yeah.
But it's real. And it's like, wow.
Well, for all of those who don't live in Amsterdam, you have to. We have compassion.
This also can happen in Kuala Lumpur, or even in Belgium.
Oh, okay. And perhaps even in downtown Dhaka.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've been there.
It's a little bit harder because it's so busy there, but you can even find that.
You can find those moments.
So I think that's one of the great things that this practice will do, is will deeply ground you in be, and it will give you a capacity to deal with boredom and to discover that boredom is at any moment able to be transformed into some deep and powerful and profound experiences.
And at the same time, you can let go of your attachments to that online virtual personality. You feel like, oh, it's just fairy dust. It's just a poof.
Yes,
it's an illusion.
It is an illusion.
And see it for what it is.
Yeah, the thing is, you can never go out there and grasp hold of this persona you have online.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have you can't reduce it to some material reality even.
Yes, but there's definitely there's invisible strings from your mind going to that virtual reality. Yeah. And those strings can only be cut if you go within. Then they just dissolve. Yeah. You can't just will them away. It's not like, okay, I'll be not attached to that persona anymore. That's like you can try, but you have to really go within rate them that way.
And I think when you start to really truly identify with who you truly are on that deepest fundamental level, you will find that your ability to interact with the world without being captured by the world will dramatically transform. So instead of being incredibly reactive and incredibly sensitive to criticisms or to praise, and then instead of chasing after to praise and running away from criticism, you will start to find yourself in a position where you can take them both as simply experiences.
Yeah.
And so that becomes really powerful if you can do that.
And what about the problem of information? I want to talk about that as well. In the 21st century, we have so much information coming to us from the media, from social media, and it shapes our understanding of the world.
We're drowning in it. We're drowning in so much information.
We can choose whatever tribe we want to be part of.
Yeah.
We want to be a Republican or a Democrat. Do we want to be a flat earther or a round earther?
Yeah.
There's so many different flavors to choose from.
And so this is really great. Some people would say we live in the disinformation age. And so the governments around the world are panicking and running around and, worried about disinformation. But what I would say is I see it as the opposite side. I say we're living in the discernment age. So we all need to become incredibly discerning as to how we consume information about the world. And there was a film that came out a couple of years ago, and it won the Oscar for the best picture.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And it's the film is called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Yeah.
And that film for me really captured an experience that young people are having at this time, where this film was set in a universe or in a multiverse. So there was an infinite number of you living in an infinite number of multiverses, so parallel universes. And that there was a technology invented where you could transfer from this universe to another universe to another universe, so you could go to a universe where you're a doctor, and then another one you're a garbage man, another one you're a painter, another one you're doing this, another one you're doing that. And there was one of the main characters was this young person, and they had been doing all of this universe jumping. So they jumped around all through these infinite number of universes and had an infinite number of experiences through that. So they experienced what it felt like to be
a rock.
Yeah, a rock, a mother, a doctor, a singer, all of these infinite number of things and the infinite number of experiences that you can have through all of these different lifetimes. And from that, they became incredibly nihilistic. And so the nihilism was encapsulated in this wonderful image of a bagel with everything on it. And it was like a black hole. It was like sucking all being into it.
Yeah.
And so their great suffering had come from experiencing and having seen and experienced too much. And from that, extrapolating that nothing is meaningful.
Yeah.
Because they'd experienced too much. And I would say that young people, talking to you young people out there in the internet world, because you've already seen, so a young person now, by the age of 15 or 20, they've seen more hours of content online than any human being has ever seen before. So they've seen this infinite variety, of clowns crashing cars off bridges, ponies eating flowers, anything you could imagine. They've seen it already.
Yeah, the AI cat telenovela.
Yeah,
trending now.
And so because they've experienced so much, it's very easy to start to think, well, I've already seen and felt so much. I'm like, does anything actually mean anything? Like, is everything truly just simply random and meaningless?
Right. Because there's no context to what they see.
Yeah, exactly.
They see pieces of content with no context.
Yeah.
And there's no story around it.
Yeah, everything's just flashing into being in front of their eyes.
Lots of stimuli. That's why I think many young people have burnouts nowadays.
Yeah.
That never used to happen. Like, you had burnouts when you were in your 40s or 50s.
Yeah, exactly. After grinding away at this hard job for like the last 30 years.
But now people are 17 years old, they have burnouts.
Yeah. It is so I think there is something going on there, that people are taking in too much stimulation and in a non-discerning fashion. So they haven't learned how to defend their boundaries.
Yeah, plus all the tech companies like TikTok, they're set out to keep you scrolling and keep you watching.
Yeah.
It's like the best minds of the world are curating this experience to just keep you going.
Yeah. And so that can give you this unrealistic picture of the world. It can pollute your inner environment. And so if we use the analogy of the physical body, so we have a physical body, but we also have an information body as well.
Mhm.
And so in the physical body, if I was just eating junk food all the time and I was never curating what I was eating, I was just eating whatever the advertisers put in front of me, I was just eating it.
You know the documentary Super Size Me?
Yeah.
That is an experiment in that.
Yeah. So
It's like eat anything that they say.
yeah.
Supersize it? Sure, supersize it.
Whatever you get offered, you eat it. And so we know that if I did that with my physical body, after some very short period of time, I would start to feel ill. I would start to become bloated. My energy would go down. Like I would have all of these physical problems that would really affect how I experience the world. But we don't carry that over into the information, like our information intake. So I like to think of it as like taking in nourishment.
Yeah.
So whatever you're taking into your consciousness it becomes the information which you use to build the world. And so you want to be really careful about what information streams you're allowing into your mind.
You have to see it like food.
Yeah, because the thing is, so if we want to think, is it possible to really know if the world is going great or if it's doing badly?
Mm.
And I would say it's actually in the short term, in your day-to-day life, in this year, and this 6-month period, it's completely impossible for you to know if the world is moving in a positive or a negative direction.
Can we get that from the newspapers though?
So as we know, the newspapers and the media, they are trying to capture our attention, and we're far more sensitive to negative information than we are to positive information. So if I was thinking about what is happening, and I'm in New York City at the moment, I'm in Jamaica, Queens, and if I'm thinking about this neighborhood, and I'm thinking, okay, what's happening here today? And there's probably 100,000 acts of genuine goodness and kindness. So there's mothers sacrificing their giving their love and attention to their children. There's parents giving their love and attention, to their children who are studying. There's grandparents looking after people. There's people looking after grandparents. There's friends coming and sharing.
There's a bunch of people meditating.
There's the people down the road meditating. There's people doing music. So there's all of these wonderful, good things happening. And then if I look on the newspaper, I see today that there was a carjacking or someone shot someone or there was an assault. And how many good actions does it take to balance out that one horrible thing that happened?
43?
See, it's like, how do you balance that? How do you try and work that out? And so the media is not covering the thousands of incidents of people looking after their grandkids and sharing lovely moments with them. So none of those are getting covered, and all we're getting is the one story about someone being shot down in Hillside Avenue.
Right.
And so then our picture is suddenly, oh, okay, the world is dangerous out there. There's people going around shooting people. And we have this completely lopsided picture where we're not seeing any of the good things. And perhaps we need to see 100 good things for every bad thing.
Yeah.
Because we're so much more sensitive to negative things. But they're almost invisible to us. Like we see our interactions with our friends and we know that we have some, lovely moments with people that we care for, but we don't see all of the other invisible ones.
Yeah, and there's a danger there because we talked about the famous Einstein quote where he said, the most important question is, do I live in a friendly universe or in a hostile universe?
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't make a conscious choice, and if we just go by what we're fed by the media, we fall into the default picture. This must be a hostile
Someone
world.
shot someone. It's obviously, if someone shot someone, it's obviously a hostile world.
And if you make that decision that it's a hostile world, then that is what's reflected to you.
Yes.
Because whatever you believe inside, that is what you see outside.
Yeah.
So if you really feel that this is a hostile world, you will only see the bad things. Yeah, it's a reinforcing.
Because if you were feeling insecure and afraid because you live in a hostile world, you're going to go down the road, and they've done experiments on this, that your consciousness changes the faces that you see. So if you're feeling afraid and fearful, you will see faces and you will read them as being aggressive. You'll read them as being suspicious, that they were looking at you, they were giving you the side eye. And so you will go down the road and you'll see all of these people and you will put really ill intentions and motives inside of them. And you're doing that.
Just
And then just the same way that when you're feeling in a very joyful, blissful state of being, you'll walk down the street and you'll see, oh my God, look at this. Oh, wow, look at this person. Well, everyone you'll see will
smiling.
be a saint, and you'll see the beauty inside all of these people. And so that picture is being created from the information that you've taken in. And so there's a really good, I just saw someone recently made a great comment that we have to protect the borders of our mind with great care, and take it very, very seriously, our unconsciousness. And if you look through the headlines on any news service, like if you look on the Guardian newspaper, you will often see the first few headlines as something really destructive or something really strange and bizarre, like that someone has kept some child locked up in their basement for the last 24 years.
Yeah.
And that would become a top headline, because human beings, we are always interested in novelty and negative things.
Well, some people say if you want to know what's happening in the world, follow the news, but it's exactly the opposite. The news is what's not happening. I mean, it's happening, but it's not the average
thing. It is
thing.
the most rare and unusual.
All the outliers, they make the news.
Yeah, and if you read those things, often the top few news stories are really disturbing things.
Yeah.
Like the most disturbing things that have happened.
I love the acronym for FEAR. Yeah. What is actually FEAR? You can see it as an acronym, FEAR, and it's false evidence appearing real.
Oh, wonderful.
So that's because it's all false evidence, but because we are kind of primed to go after negative news. We're prompted that way, and we become fearful.
Yeah, and we've talked about earlier on. We talked about the reasons for that as well. So there's a real biological reason why we're sensitive to negative information. So it's not that we've chosen to do that, but it's built into our system because we're tribal beings. And so if someone was causing problems or was not worthy of our trust, we needed to know that in a tribal setting, because you're interacting with all of these people. But in the modern global village, the fact that someone in Rwanda or someone in this country or that country did something really crazy and destructive, that doesn't affect me because I'm never going to come across that.
Exactly. So we define the problem here. It's information overload, and we need to have information hygiene.
Yeah.
We need to discern.
Yes.
How does the spiritual life help us?
So one of the great skills we learn through spiritual practice is having good habits. So a spiritual life is a habit. It's a practice that we develop over time. And so when we come into our spiritual practice, we're probably not that great at diligently sitting down and doing something at the same time every day, and doing it with our full intention and bringing all of our resources to be in that moment, being fully present, because that's not really taught to us. I mean, some of us have a natural aptitude for that. You often see that people who become really good students because they can find it easy to sit there and be focused on tasks. But most people find that a very difficult thing to be focused and on task and to have good habits that they repeat day on day. And I think spirituality, one of the great benefits of developing your spiritual practice, one of the best ways to make your spiritual practice stick is to try and do it at the same time every day. And doing it in the morning is always ideal because you cut out all of the potential chaos and distractions of the day. So you get in ahead of all of that and you do your practice. And so that brings some presence of mind. It brings some stillness. It brings that moment of clarity. It gives you that little bit of space in your day. So when you go out into the world, you, instead of simply reacting to the stimulus you find yourself confronted with, you realize that there's a moment where you have a choice in everything. So you go into a food place and you see that they're saying, hey, get a supersized Happy Meal. And you're about to respond to it. And you say, actually, no, I'm going to get something healthy today. I'm going to eat well. And you have those moments as well in your information intake. So you're perhaps traveling on the train to work, or you're doing something, and you think, okay, I'm going to catch up on what's happening in the world.
You take out your phone, scrolling.
And you just mindlessly look at whatever they're feeling. So what you want to do in those moments is try and be discerning. Like if there's a story about your local town and something that's coming up that you're perhaps interested in, think, okay, that's something that I'm perhaps interested in, and I will read those types of stories. But not being captured by what I call fear porn, which is, the most catastrophic, outrageous things that have happened. Like, you don't need to know about that. Like, in some faraway place at some point, someone is always doing some bad thing.
Yeah.
the chances of you ever coming face to face with that person is incredibly low. So don't give them your attention. Don't feed those forces that are acting out those negative things.
I think you have to realize that attention is a currency.
It
Like, they
is.
have a limited amount of it. And like, if you spend it, it's gone.
Yeah.
So spend it wisely.
Spend it very wisely. And that's the thing. You start by trying to be more conscious in your interactions with both the real world, but also the online world. So you start to try and bring your consciousness and your awareness and use it like a shield. When you see things that perhaps in the past you would have immediately clicked on it because it seems, interesting or exciting in some way, but realizing that those things are not helping you.
I think what also can help is a full digital detox for some time. Like, for 7 days, just don't look at any social media and see how that affects your consciousness.
Yeah.
Because it will affect your consciousness. If you stop scrolling on TikTok or Instagram and just do that for a full week, and see how that affects you.
Yeah.
And then I think when you go back to it, you have you're calibrated better.
Yeah. It's like you're more nuanced.
You feel when you're going too far.
Yeah.
And I think that's also training your internal conscience, I'd say, your internal watchdog. There's this tool in us, this agency that will tell us exactly when we are scrolling too much or when we're spending too much time in our comfort zones.
Yeah, and we only can feel that when we've recalibrated ourselves. If we've already gone far over any normal limitations and normal amounts, and we've overindulged, then it's very hard for us to feel. It's like if you go to a buffet, you eat the buffet every day. You at the end of the week, it's kind of recalibrated to your diet,
your appetite.
Yeah, your appetite to eat all of these plates of food.
Yeah, exactly. And I think spiritual practice is a great way to recalibrate it. You have to go back to your essence, and the needle just jumps back to the 0 point.
Yeah.
And from there, when the needle goes out too far, you feel it. There's this little inner voice that's telling you, hey, maybe stop.
Yeah, maybe that's enough.
Maybe that's enough.
And people will make the argument that, but if you don't look, you'll be so ill-informed. You won't know what's going on in the world. And my point to them would be, you don't know what's going on in the world by going on the social media or by going on any media site, because that's not their job. Like, that's the mistake that we have, is the idea that the news media is still in the business of giving us a balanced picture of the world. Like, now they're in the business of attention. And so they're trying to steal as much attention as they can.
They need eyeballs
to sell it to other people. And so for them, their incentive is not to give you the best possible picture of the world. They're not trying to tell you that, okay, humanity, today, we saw billions and billions of acts of kindness, and, people walk their dogs and feed their dogs, and people will spend time cuddling with their cat on the sofa. And, there were people today painting beautiful works of art, and there were people today practicing their music. Like, you're never told that is entirely true. All of those things are true. And so there's very particular types of news that is controversial and confrontational and will make us upset or angry or sad. Those are the types of things we're told we should.
Well, what is maybe true is that you don't get to know the topics that everybody's talking about. Mm-hmm. Because that is something that you get from social media. There's these trending topics that come out, especially young people. Yeah. They want to know about Skibidi Toilet.
Yeah.
They want to know about the AI telenovela cats.
Yeah.
Like that.
And there's something really powerful, though, about finding your own voice and finding your own interests. Because at that moment where you're just going along with the trends, you are no longer a human being with agency. You're simply a plaything of forces that you don't understand and you can't control. You have no real input to do. And there is something wonderful about finding your own interests and going after them with some passion and some feeling and giving yourself fully to something that you're actually passionate about. And, it may be, art, or maybe music, or maybe sports, but there's these very powerful and positive pathways out there in the world.
Anything that captures your interests, that's not a fancy. So if people are interested in different things, but it's always interesting to know, why does that capture my interest? Like, why am I so obsessed with speed skating? Like, why does that, I love that so much?
Yeah.
Because you have a connection with it. So your interests and your passions, like, follow them, they're telling you something, which brings us kind of, I feel, to another problem which we have.
Yeah.
Is we have so many choices nowadays.
Yeah.
Right. We want to talk about that as well. We live in an age where you have an unlimited opportunities to do with your life whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And that is also a problem because,
Yeah.
how do we choose direction?
Yeah.
Like, how do we find the direction in our life?
Yeah, and we can call that problem choice paralysis.
Yeah.
So if you give someone 2 options or 3 options, they'll find it easy to choose. And it's like when you go into a bubble tea place. I find bubble tea places are so stressful because there's such an infinite variety of teas available.
Yeah, I get that in my waffle shop. We have 35 different toppings.
Oh my God.
Yeah, what do I choose? What do I...
So yeah, you see
that every day.
choice paralysis happening every day. So with choice paralysis, when we're looking at direction in life, because when we're suffering from that problem of feeling as though, well, is everything just simply meaningless? Is it we just a whole bunch of random beings and atoms just bouncing around here and just creating random content? And when you start to think about, well, what am I going to do with my life? Which direction am I going to go? And in the past, society constrained your choices somewhat. So if you lived in Holland, a few hundred years ago, you had the option, of being a trader, you had the option of being a farmer, you had the option of being a seafarer. It was like there was not an infinite variety of different careers that you could possibly choose. And often your family as well would provide some constraining force. So in a lot of parts of the world still, it's you will do what your father does. So if you grow up in India and your father has a certain career, a certain path in business, and you would often maybe take over and do something like that. So that's a common thing in Asia. And so now when you're growing up, there's such a variety of things that seem incredibly valuable. So there's all of the traditional careers. There's, of course, being a YouTuber, a podcaster, and a social media influencer now. But beyond that, even we've been telling the story to young people, and young people have this deep urge in their teenage years that they want to do something to change the world. They want to have a real impact on.
Yeah, we said teenage, but also early 20s.
Yeah. So there's kind of this messianic phase.
Yeah.
Where you start to see that there's all these problems in the world, and you start to think, well, right, what am I going to do about it? And so universities and higher education has really promoted this idea that the best thing you can do is be an activist. So find some causes and devote your time to those causes. An activist. And the thing is, there's an infinite variety of causes. Should I be fighting against ocean plastic, or the orangutan rainforest in Sumatra? Should I be trying to protect that? Should I be trying to help sea shepherd protect the krill in the Southern Ocean? It's an infinite variety of things, and they all seem legitimate and valuable. And so what we take it back to in the spiritual game is we say that we are here taking part in a divine lila, or a divine play. So we say that your soul, your character, has your manifestation here has a particular set of qualities that it wants to embody and manifest in the world, and it has a particular set of problems that it's uniquely equipped to solve. Because that's the thing, like everyone could be out there trying to solve the ocean plastic problem. But we probably don't need everyone to do that. We probably need some people, like the great Dutchman Boylan Slat, who's actually working on it, is actually solving the ocean plastics problem. So there's actual people who, for them, that perhaps is their soul's calling. And that when they find themselves doing that, that is the only thing that they want to spend their time to, because it's so gripping.
They get a lot of joy from doing it. They get a lot of meaning and purpose and sense of purpose.
Yeah, but if we don't take time to connect with who we truly are, we're just going to be simply buffeted from one cause to another. At this point, we're going to be, fighting for this cause. Then 2 weeks later, we'll be out protesting for that cause. And so we'll never really have a clear pole star or direction that we are traveling on ourselves. And so until we take time to do the practice, we can't really connect with that deeper part of our beings that has access to that wisdom and that insight as to which direction.
Yeah, because your soul is like a compass. It points your needle in the right direction.
Yeah.
And if you always go back to that compass needle, your life will be steered in a certain way.
Yeah.
And your life's mission is being revealed to you. That's definitely been my experience. Over the years, I've made life choices that I've never, with my mind, would have taken.
Yeah, you never would have imagined
opening a Waffle House.
Yeah.
No way. Or becoming a freelance journalist back in the day. No.
Yeah.
I mean, those things came to me and they felt like the right thing to do at the time. And I got a lot of joy from it. So I think those feelings of joy and purpose and like it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Again, you need something to feel that. So you need to be calibrated to your true self.
Yes.
in order to get the direction to go there. So again, coming back to the practice, recalibrating, going within every morning.
Yeah. And kind of getting that sense of that there is a whispering voice inside you.
Yes.
That is going to help guide you through the infinite complexity of life.
And it's interesting to talk about the different voices that we can hear within. I mean, I'm not talking about that we all are, what's the word?
Spiritualists or...
Yeah, exactly. Or like schizophrenics. Yeah. I'm a little more dramatic, schizophrenics. No, we do have, I mean, our mind has a way of speaking to us, right? Our soul has a way of speaking to us. Our vital energy has a way to speak to us. And they all have different colors or they have different voices. And so the mind is often very loud. It will say like, okay, avoid pain, go to pleasure, or follow your desires, your clinging. Your soul has a very subtle voice. It's like you have to train yourself to hear it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, it can be very clear to you, but many times it's so subtle that you might miss it.
Yeah. And it's only through the practice of learning to listen to it and then actually following its guidance that you actually start to feel as though it has a concrete reality, like it's a real strength of its own.
Exactly.
Because you start in the beginning, you're like, I feel like this direction or this opportunity has something for me. I mean, even if it seems very left field and it was something that you never imagined, but then you step into it and there's a sense of excitement and newness, and then you see how things unfold. And often when you do follow the soul's guidance, things unfold in a way that's radically more interesting than you ever imagined.
Yeah. So we are now on a 2-week retreat here in New York, and we have something called the circus, where we come together and we perform acts, and we kind of do that in a joyful way. And I had this kind of inkling to do something for the circus this time. I had this kind of inner inspiration, but I thought, maybe not. But it was subtly saying, try this act. And I just followed it, and I did this act, which was a very simple act, and it turned out to be really great. It was a really wonderful thing, and I had so much joy doing it, and gave other people joy.
It gave me a lot of joy.
Yeah,
it's very skillful, and it was very amusing as well.
So that's to me, that's like following the soul's voice. That was my soul saying like, just do it. And very often our mind will discourage us. Our mind will say like, oh, it's too difficult, or maybe people will not like it. It's just silly. But then don't listen to that voice, the discouraging voice. But then the subtle voice always tells you the right thing to do. And over the years, I've always learned to follow that voice. And if you don't follow it, you feel a sense of, some inner loss. It's like,
it was like a missed opportunity. Yeah. And then often that is more painful than the things you did that turned out to be a bad choice.
Yeah, and you'll make some bad choices sometimes. You'll fall on your face a few times. But, you'll learn through that.
But and it's like if we imagine that your life is a play and a drama that is being acted out, the most exciting thing in a play is when things are revealed about characters. And especially for the character, like when the interactions with the world reveal something about who they are or who they're supposed to be growing into. And for us, just watching the play, it's really thrilling.
Right.
We're like, wow, this is his role. This is what he is supposed to be doing. And so we each have that opportunity in our own life to discover that we have the soul's journey and we have the soul's mission here on earth, that these particular sets of opportunities and problems and qualities that we alone are uniquely qualified to act out.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's something really thrilling, I think.
Yeah, and so for young people who are struggling with choice paralysis, like what would you tell them?
So I would say take time with yourself, be bored, do your practice, and then see what comes up. See what comes to you through when you, like after you've done your spiritual practice and you start thinking about what you're going to do or where you're going in the world. Start to see what things start to appear. Allow your inner canvas to be blank. And see what things start to project themselves.
Because there's also a lot of pressure on young people nowadays to really achieve, because they have so many choices. They feel that they have to tick all these boxes.
Yeah,
they have to go on the world's journey. Travel the world.
Yeah,
they have to have this great career. They have to have whatever. They have to see all the series on Netflix. They have to be with the times. They have to scroll to the. Yeah, they have to curate their online persona. There's so many things they feel pressure to do.
Yeah.
That's also a problem.
That really is, and that goes back to the Delphic Oracle. At the Delphic Oracle, when people would come to visit the Delphic Oracle in ancient Greece, it would have written above the entrance to the Oracle, It said, know thyself.
Notice auton.
Oh,
That's the Greek. Yeah.
yeah.
I used to have Greek in my high school days.
Oh, well. And so for me, that's such a wonderful thing to take on as one of the driving forces in your life, is to learn to know thyself. To truly know myself is the greatest gift I can give to myself, because it's the most functional, powerful, and joyful place to live my life from. If I'm acting in a way that is truly in alignment with who I am, then my life takes on a whole new hue and color. And I think that's really when people start to go astray, is they start to betray themselves. And so this kind of talks to my last point that I wanted to talk to, which is I wrote down the word purity.
Mm-hmm.
And so purity is not a quality that is really valued by the society we live in anymore. Like a few centuries ago, we would really value certain people, or, monastic traditions, or the nuns. We would think, these people are look how pure they are. That's living such a pure life. But now purity seems some sort of antique, quaint, old-fashioned idea. It's like you see the Amish people, or you see the Mormons, and the women are walking around in a very simple and traditional garb, and it seems very pure, but it seems very antiquated, not really with the time.
Right.
And so we in some way we've lost the value and understanding the value of having some purity inside of ourselves. And the one way that I thought of as a way for people to really get what I'm talking about here is, if you imagine yourself as a child, and you imagine as a child, as like, 8 or 9 years old, and you're imagining what your life might be like as an adult, and the type of life that you would imagine, and what sort of life you would think would be beautiful and fun and meaningful. And obviously your picture is not going to be really that accurate, because you're a child. What do you know? But there's something about that childlike innocence and purity that you in some way hope that you will still have as an adult. You still hope that you will see the magic and the beauty in the world in some way. And when we look at how people's lives have gone and how their lives have turned out, for most people, I think if the child version of them could see how they've grown and become as an adult, the child would be really disappointed. And we can feel that as an adult. If we've corrupted ourselves and we've betrayed ourselves in so many different ways, that we know that if we looked at ourselves from the point of view of our child, we wouldn't be inspired. We wouldn't think like, wow, what a great life. We'd think like, wow, what went wrong here?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that's kind of a good way, because we're not trying to be puritanical and tell people that this is the only way you can live a life. But each of us knows in some way or another where we've gone wrong, where we've betrayed ourselves, where we've let ourselves down. And I think looking through the eyes of us as a child is a really good way to try and see how that would look. And I have to say, I think if the young version of Abhinava, if he'd seen your life now and the things you're doing, I think he'd be really pleased. I think he'd think it's so cool that you sort of Waffle House, you're performing as a musician, you're performing plays, and your life is so colorful and full of.
Well, I have to say the same about you. If your childlike version would see you, having a music shop, running these fantastic ultra races, being part of a beautiful spiritual community, I think would be quite happy as well.
Yeah, so I think that's a really nice point to sort of end on for the things we've gone through. Because I think that really, I think all of those things capture some of the problems that the world has created for us these days. And I think with all of them, we can see the spiritual tradition has answers to all of these issues. And
from the ancient to the modern world, right?
Exactly. And so it's a timeless wisdom. And that's the great thing about spirituality, is it doesn't come into fashion and go out of fashion. It will always be true. It will always be eternal. And we'll have answers to problems that we're suffering, because it is the game we're playing here at the most fundamental level.
I had 2 aphorisms with Sri Chinmoy that inspired me this morning when I read them, and I just wanted to share them because they kind of tie into what we've been talking about. The first one is, if you see the world with your mind's eye, you're bound to be disappointed. If you see the world with your mind's eye, you're bound to be disappointed. Next one. If you see the world with your heart's eye, you will see so much that is good and inspiring here on earth. If you see the world with your heart's eye, you will see so much that is good and inspiring here on earth. So I think that sums it up, right? To not see the world through your mind's eye, which is so filtered with all this information that we've taken on board, which may not be serving us.
Yeah.
But to go into your heart, your core, and see the world from there and see how beautiful, rich, and inspiring the world is.
Yeah. So we hope you've got some takeaways from today's episode.
That'd be fantastic. And thank you for watching and listening. We are now a bi-weekly podcast, so we'll come online every 2 weeks now. And it was a pleasure to talk here live from New York, Queens, where we have our annual August retreat. We had a wonderful time for the last 2 weeks.
We have indeed.
Yeah. And we'll see you next week again, or in 2 weeks.
All the best.